I've been reading from this book, Simply A Course in Miracles by Alao Alani, my pen name. It's on Amazon. I've been reading some quotes from the great scholars and thinkers and philosophers and mystics, theologians of the past. Today we're going to tackle Nietzsche. Friedrich Nietzsche, who is... I was a philosophy major in college. I didn't understand Nietzsche then, and I'm not sure I understand him now, and I would have to really dive back into the books. I remember reading the Walter Kaufman translations, and I never really got that deeply into Nietzsche, but there were a number of other people in the philosophy department who were big Nietzsche people. I really, I say that just to, put it on the table that what we're doing here is just like some of the more popular quotes that you've heard of Nietzsche and see how they apply to A Course in Miracles, right? So let's read a few of them. Nietzsche was 19th century. He started as a philologist, and then he became a philosopher. And he wrote somewhat eccentrically. He actually he was a professor at a very young age, and then for the latter 20 years of his life, he suffered from a number of debilitating physical illnesses. He died in 1900, and he has been very highly influential. For example, we talked about Jim Morrison and the Doors. Jim Morrison definitely read Nietzsche and also quoted Nietzsche in some of his songs and his poetry, or at least you see echoes of Nietzsche there. Here's the first one from him. He who fights with monsters might take care lest he thereby become a monster. And if you gaze for long enough into an abyss, the abyss gazes also into you. If you fight, the one who fights with monsters might take care lest he thereby become a monster. All right, well, this is, we all know this, but do we? Because we do it all the time. So we fight against the evils out there. And in fighting the evil, what does that do to us? In the process of fighting the evil. For some, it might be, for the few, it might be what they're here to do. But for most of us, it might be better to look at, look inside of ourselves and see that the evil that we see outside of ourselves might really be coming from within ourselves. And we generally do not go deep enough in that, and we tend to rail against the all of the evil forces in the world and the evil people. And this is not to say that there are not people that have malicious intent and intentions and do awful things. And it's not to say that we shouldn't try to stop people like that. But we also might want to look at where that comes from, and the way that we can look at where that comes from is to look at our own mind, because it's within all of us. There is all those thoughts lurking within all of us, and what separates someone who goes down the quote unquote the wrong path versus someone who does not. That's a very interesting question, and ultimately I don't think we really have good answers for these ultimate questions. So Nietzsche, if anything, is providing another way of looking at things and a caution. Say, don't be so sure what's going on, and don't be so sure you have the absolute answer. So number 2, next quote: "You have your way, I have my way. As for the right way, the correct way, and the only way, it does not exist." So you have your way, I have my way. As for the right way, the correct way, and the only way, it does not exist. So again, who really knows, right? We have our own ways of seeing things. We have our own stories. Is there one correct way for all of us? Probably not. Doesn't seem to be. Now, but there may be some overarching principles that are true for all of us. And A Course in Miracles would say, within all of us, there is a light that shines, what the Course calls the Holy Spirit, which will, if we can tune into that, we will find guidance, and that guidance will help us to return home to our true self, ultimately. So that would be in a sense, a way that is true for all of us, right? And we all have also the wrong way, which is the ego. So we all have the Holy Spirit, we all have the ego, and which teacher, what the Course calls the teacher, whichever teacher or guide that we follow is going to determine what our experience is of life. So let's read on. Next one. There are no facts, only interpretations. You've probably heard this one before. This is a famous one from Nietzsche. There's no facts, only interpretations. Everyone sees things differently. There's that great quote, we don't see the world as it is, we see the world as we are in any given moment. For example, we might read the same words, but we both get something different from those words. We see something different. We all read A Course in Miracles. Course in Miracles students all read A Course in Miracles, and some people have very different understandings of what the Course is saying than others. I think the problem with interpreting A Course in Miracles, just like interpreting anything, is to think that your interpretation is necessarily the correct one. Now, what Nietzsche seems to be saying here is, again, as a caution, is like saying, are you really sure that you have the correct interpretation? Do you really know? How do you know? Right? And if you really do have the correct interpretation, why does not everyone agree or accept your interpretation? Right? These are all questions I think would be helpful to ask. And there have been Course in Miracles teachers who definitely think that they have the right interpretation of A Course in Miracles. Now, Nietzsche is getting at the idea that that's not necessarily a fact. That is your interpretation of your interpretation of, you think that your interpretation is correct, and you think that if everyone just followed your interpretation, then they would get to the truth that much quicker, or whatever it is, or they wouldn't be lost. But how can you be so sure of that, right? So this all gets fairly complicated, but the good news is that you can at least find the interpretation that works for you, and that it seems to be helping you, right? And if it's helping you to bring you to peace of mind, and it's helping to alleviate suffering, and helping you to have better relationships, then I would say that is a fact that you can count on, right? There exists in the world a single path along which no one can go except you. Whither does it lead? Do not ask. Go along it. So just do it. There's a path. Everyone has to follow their own path. Now, he doesn't say, but everyone is going to get to the same place. He doesn't say that there. He just says everyone has their own path. And it's a singular path. There exists in the world a single path along which no one can go except you. You have your own unique path. And I think the Course supports this idea. The Course seems to suggest that we all have our atonement process, our individual atonement process, and the Holy Spirit will guide us in our individual atonement process. And we don't have to worry about where it's going, but we just follow the lead of the Holy Spirit, take Jesus' hand, so to speak, and we will find our way. Next one, we believe that we know something about things themselves when we speak of trees, colors, snow, and flowers, and yet we possess nothing but metaphors for things. Metaphors which correspond in no way to the original entities. I'll read it again. We believe that we know something about things themselves when we speak of trees, colors, snow, and flowers, and yet we possess nothing but metaphors for things. Metaphors which correspond in no way to the original entities. Or you could say symbols, or you could say language. We have words to point to things, but the words don't necessarily tell you the essence of the thing itself. Right? They point to what the thing is, but they can't tell you what the essence of the thing is. So with the Course in Miracles, for example, and the Course in Miracles does say, the Course deals in symbols. Everything is symbolic. The word God, for example, everyone has their own idea of what God is. We all know what that word refers to. It refers to, like an ultimate being, or absolute being, divine being. But what that is, everyone has a different concept. So the word itself cannot tell you what it is. It just refers to it. And so that's why Jesus in the Course refrains from telling us what God actually is. Because he can't really tell you. You have to experience what God is yourself, and then you will know. Now, but even that experience, how do you know you've had the ultimate experience? Right? That's also problematic, and that also might be a matter of interpretation to some extent. And this is where everything becomes very problematic. In a sense, you might say, well, you're there at the goal when there's nowhere else to go. You can't possibly go anywhere else. Then maybe you've reached the goal. But I think my phone might shut off because the other day it's hot in here. You can see I'm sweating. Just in case my phone does shut off, I'll try to finish this another time. But anyway, next one. Amor fati. Let that be my love the henceforth. I do not want to wage war against what is ugly. I do not want to accuse. I do not even want to accuse those who accuse. Looking away shall be my only negation. And all in all, and on the whole, someday I wish to be only a yes-sayer. This is a beautiful sentiment. And this is a very important concept, amor fati, in Nietzsche's thought. He also had the idea of the eternal recurrence. But this idea is, I don't want to even accuse those who accuse. I want to learn, basically he's saying, I want to learn true forgiveness. I want to be only a yes-sayer. He's really aligning himself with the idea of the Holy Spirit. I want only the Holy Spirit's vision. I do not want to accuse. I don't want to wage war against anything. I want to be, I want the peace of God above all else. Seems to be what he's saying with this idea. And this is, of Course in Miracles, not any different really. All right, next one. Whenever I climb, I am followed by a dog called ego. Whenever I climb, I am followed by a dog called ego. I wonder if that had an influence on Sigmund Freud, or maybe Freud came first, because they were around the same time. Nietzsche was a little before Freud, but so Nietzsche, understood the ego, at least in his own way. I don't know if his understanding of the ego is the same as the Course's, but it's true. Wherever we go, the ego is right there. Right? And so we have to take account of the ego and understand how the ego is working. And in understanding how the ego works, we can identify the ego. And in being able to identify the ego is important, because then we can understand if we want to choose the ego or not. If we can kind of discern what is egoic and what is not egoic, then we can decide if we're going to choose what is egoic versus not what is not egoic. Right? What is fear and what is love, or what is real and what is not real, or what is true and what is not, and what is false. All right, last one. And those who were seen dancing were thought to be insane by those who could not hear the music. Those who were seen dancing were not understood by the. Oops.